5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, spiritual dope. Spiritual, is that my podcast? It's so, yeah, listen, after you go through like a few of them, you forget like who you're even announcing, and like you have to get used to your new one and just how's that gonna come out? But hey guys, I'm on with Dan. Is it okay to say your last name, Dan?
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah, so Dan Reeves, the Spiritual Underground. Dan and I connected just kind of just on the general idea of our podcast and what we have to share. And it's a similar journey, but just different tales, right? So that's the thing, right? So everybody's kind of going through something. They just, there's a guy that I listened to book, Jed McKenna, and he's kind of like this salty spiritual guy, right?
Hmm.
And what I like about him though is like he goes, listen, I don't know how you're going to get there, but I can tell you what to expect after you've gotten there, which I think is kind of interesting. So Dan, thanks for hopping on today. We're tackling Sunday in this way. And one of the things I like to ask people is before we even get started, right? You and I talked, you interviewed me recently. People, we are kind of conduits for the universe to talk through, right? We're conduits. Our story that we're sharing here and what we're sharing here today is meant probably for somebody else more so than it's meant even for us. So for that person who's listening today, just to receive the message that's being delivered, what do you think, what is something that somebody needs to hear today?
Well, the dope and the booze brought me to my knees, my bottom, so to speak. But the thing what I'm finding out as I keep on traveling this journey is that we all have some kind of room for more in our lives. That's the question I ask people whenever I'm talking outside the 12-step circles about, if they want to change their lives. Do you have any room for more? And I think most people, the answer to that is yes. I have actually had one person tell me no. I don't really believe them, but there always is room for more. And the problem is it seems like we get stuck. And hopefully with these things, what I hope to be is a catalyst to unstuck people. No matter what direction you're coming from, is that there is a way to get unstuck. And I don't know what that really is for you. I know what it was for me, but what I can promise you is that there is getting out of that hole is available to you. Yeah. Might take some effort. It's going to take some action for sure. Yeah. But there's a hopeless feeling in a lot of people's hearts that they're like stuck in this spot, and they're just going to have to resign themselves to being this.
And this is all there is, right? There's nothing else.
Right.
This is as good as it gets.
Yeah. That my sponsor, my mentor, has rewritten the 12 steps in a way, not rewritten it, but reformatted it into some modern language. And in the beginning of his book, he puts this statement out here. This is not the way my life is supposed to be. This is not the way my life is supposed to be. Right. Now, if you don't fall under that category, great. Right. But fact is, I think a lot of people are. I see this underlying. You see it in the stores. I think I've spoke to you before, and I know your spirit. You see this like almost a zombie, like dissatisfaction underlying most people's day to day. It's everything looks to be like being done in a little bit of a pain spot. Like, oh man, I have to go to the grocery store. I have, and I don't operate on that plane today, man. I'm peeking around the next corner, seeing what's coming up next.
Sure.
And there just is. You don't have to stay in that spot. We get this one, and some people would subscribe to more. I kind of wonder about that myself, about how many trips around this big blue marble I get, or wherever else. I'm not really sure about that concept, but it has landed with me. But I know this trip is the one I got now.
Sure.
And what I don't want to be doing is laying in old age, wishing I would have.
Gosh, that's so great you said that, right? That was one of the things I saved today. A lot of people give Facebook a lot of shit, right?
Yeah.
But quite honestly, like I'm pulling up the picture right now because that was one of the things. There's actually two things that you said that are kind of resonating with me. But the first one is directly in line of that, right? It says, "I hope your life is full of I can't believe I did this. Then I should have done it." right?
Yeah.
So that's powerful stuff. And then the other line I had somebody post today was kind of along the lines of what you were saying there, right? You know, we're peeking around this corner, or we're waiting and we're sitting here suffering. And the way I kind of pictured it is like, there's always a wave coming, right? There's
Yeah.
always a wave coming, and it's your opportunity to stand there and get crushed by the wave, or you have the opportunity to ride that wave, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I did caveat it. I was like, if you're going, just as in terms of surfing, it's always a good idea to go with somebody who's done that
Yeah.
before, right? Because you
Okay.
can learn on your own. You
But
can
why,
learn.
why take that hard path? I mean, and well, I'll tell you why is because for me, I
Mhm.
have trouble asking for help.
Fellowship. Yep. 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 Yep.
The
Yeah.
crucial words in the 12-step rooms,
Mm,
help me.
mm,
I don't know
mm.
what to do. When
That's
somebody utters
powerful.
those words, I
Hmm.
know then I have somebody I can work with.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
flip side of that is I know, I know,
Hmm.
I know. Yeah.
Well, look. I mean,
And
I think you said at the beginning, we all know what to do, right? We all know what we're supposed to be doing, and this works in every realm, right? This is why. This
yep,
is
it
why
does.
health. This is why health coaching is so big, though, right? And nutrition coaching is like, we all know we're supposed to get to the gym. We all know we're supposed to eat better. We all know that we're supposed to floss. All these things, right? But until you get like the dentist reminding you, like, hey, listen, if you don't if you don't floss, you're gonna lose the teeth, right?
Yep.
If you don't work out, you're gonna maybe live to be 70 instead of like a healthy 85, right? And all these things. I need help, man. That's definitely powerful stuff, though. So let's give a little background, right, on kind of your podcast and what your spiritual dope is, right? Because as you're saying here, and I think what people may be hearing already is like, you come from a place where it was street dope.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't fit the mold of that necessarily either. What most
Mm-hmm.
people think about when when you see me and hear my story, I heard you say, the video and the audio did not really line up,
Right,
uh,
right, right.
because I came from an upper middle class back home with two parents who stayed intact.
Mm-hmm.
My mom passed away in 16. If they'd made it one more year, it'd have been 50 years of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I had, a little cliche thing. I had everything I needed and most of what I wanted.
Sure. Yeah.
But yet still there was that thing, that empty feeling in me someplace. And I know a lot more of that because I will talk from hindsight, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any of this when it was going on,
Mm-hmm.
but I still had that little thing where, I just had trouble fitting in, and I allowed myself to, I hung out with some people who bullied me because the companionship was worth the pain of the bullying. I put myself in situations where I was cultivated this programming inside of me of less than, that everybody else had the playbook of how to do this thing called life, and I must have missed that day in school. And what I did was watch what you did.
Mm.
And at one point, I ran into somebody asked me, well, really my very first drugs were cigarettes, but
Mm-hmm.
I ran into something that changed the way I feel,
Mm.
because that was really what it was doing. That's why, I wasn't okay with the way I felt.
Mm.
When I ran into these substances that changed the way I felt, I thought I'd found the magic key.
Mm.
And, for a long time it was. And uh, early on I started running into consequences, getting caught with dope by the, and I've had 3 DUIs in my lifetime, and various other things that would have happened that caused some consequences, but none of them would make me change. One of the things is I came from a relatively, my dad, I'm a hometown guy. Dad knows everybody.
Mm.
With a little money and a lawyer and somebody, you
Mm-hmm.
get out of trouble when you're a
Yeah,
kid.
right.
I
Yeah,
look back at that and I'm like, man, if I maybe had some steeper, I don't, again, what if, but, I
yeah.
do wonder, I look at that now, when I
Mm-hmm.
run into somebody, some consequences are really a good thing, because that will change your trajectory.
Mm.
Otherwise I just keep on going the direction I'm going
For sure.
until some consequences happen.
Right.
Uh,
Now, like and the other thing I heard in your story too is, I mean, you were at the same job for about 28 years. I haven't gotten the specifics of the job, but this was a job that was sending you all around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, well, I got a job right out of high school. Actually, I was still in high school and I started drafting. I'm mechanically inclined. I just love that kind of stuff. I was doing mechanical drafting. I was doing architectural drafting, and I got a job and held it for like 3 years. And the fact is I couldn't get to work in the morning. the nights before, and I got time and chance again to correct my behavior, and I couldn't do it, and they let me go. And I look at that as a blessing too, because that caused some changes. That was some consequences.
Right.
And lo and behold, the universe just keeps on providing, and I got a job just not too long after that at this place, and there's a story around it, but I don't think and I didn't know where I was going. It's still a placement agency, and didn't know where I was going. And I still remember that really uncomfortable feeling, man, of walking in and trying to tell somebody that they should hire me. I just could not believe in myself. But they did, and they hired me. It was kind of a funny story. I'd come from some minimum wage job, and I told them what I needed to start. And this was like in 1991, and I think I told them I needed $6 an hour to start. This was my offer, and the guy.
It's a steal. You're a steal with that.
Yeah,
It doesn't really matter what you're doing at $6 an hour.
Yeah, I was 20. I was 20 years old.
Right,
and the guy did not. I don't think I think he was on a script, because I don't think he heard a word I said. He looked at me and goes, "Well, I'm sorry." He said, "We started everybody at $8.90 an hour. Will that work?" And I'm like, "Did he just?" And so I got this job, and I traveled up. I made work a real important thing, and it's not a bad thing, right, at all. But I did. I worked my way up. In a few years, they called me an engineer. I checked the some college box. That's another thing that doesn't go. For me, it didn't go along. Drinking and drugging did not go fit a college schedule.
Now,
I couldn't do that.
Were you already kind of like were you already a habitual user at this point in time?
Yeah, by this time, by the time I was in high school, I was smoking pot every day. I was drinking on the weekends. It's a little harder to drink in the day for me on the weekdays,
Sure.
but I could smoke pot and function.
Right.
I spent almost my entire senior year on cocaine. So I was already using pretty heavy stuff by that time. I was taking acid before I had my driver's license. We were riding. The reason I remember that so well is because we would be riding our bicycles. I know it was before driving. So yeah, by this time,
I don't think that's something I don't think I've ever tried, riding a bike while you're on acid. That was probably fun.
It really was fun. I can remember coming home at daybreak, listening to the birds singing, and riding my 10-speed with no hands, because I could ride that thing no-handed and just cruising up the road, heading home, crawl in my bedroom window before mom and dad knew I was gone for the night. But yeah, by this time I was doing that, and there was really nothing I wouldn't do. If somebody had it, I did it, and I went through phases. But somehow or another, I was still able to keep my feet under me. I got that second DUI when I was 19 years old, and the solution was not to stop drinking and driving. The solution was to do it smarter and better. I noticed that the 2 DUIs I had, one of them was because I was speeding, and the other one I got pulled over because I had a taillight out. So that meant you'd need to do an airline pilot walk down around your car before you went out. It wasn't don't drink. It was make sure that all the car lights were working and do it smarter. And I didn't get my third DUI until I was 38. So I went 19 years doing that. But I did the formula. I got married, had a couple kids, bought a home, had this job that I thought I was going to have forever because I kept on advancing up through the ranks and making more money every year. And frankly, those years, it's a little, I don't want to glorify the use, but it was fun. I had a blast.
Yeah.
And it was fun until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah. At what point is it not fun anymore? And, throughout this whole thing, right, you're still working your job and you're still advancing?
I'm functional. Yeah. I am actually a superstar at work because I'll pull the rabbit out of the hat. It's another kind of, now I look back at it as, it was more of that, it was less of a drive and more of a to prove that I'm worthy kind of thing, to prove that I'm good. I have a little Superman thing, that I need to be the superstar. So, looking back and stuff, I'll drag my feet on a project and not let them know it so that I can come in and get called in at the last minute to make the 3-point shot. And I could always make the shot, and then that would give me praise, right? Because Dan could pull these things off. But, through 12-step work and stuff, I realized I wasn't pulling that stuff off, really. I was dragging my heels. I was sandbagging to not do anything until the last minute.
Right.
But yeah, I was completely functional, and I really stayed that way until the end. And sometime around 2005, my mom had a back surgery, and the drinking wasn't working for me, but I couldn't stop. So I'm drinking every day. I'm stopping at the beer joint across the street from work, and if I didn't already have cold beer in a cooler in the car, I was stopping and getting some. And I was coming home and I was playing Chameleon. My wife had no idea I was drinking as many as I was. You know, it looked like maybe I was having two out by the grill after work, but fact was that I was guzzling them down, and I didn't go to bed. I was sleeping in a recliner in my own room, in the man cave. I just totally disassociated myself from my family.
Right.
I got these two young kids that need a dad, and he's absent most of the time. I mean, he's present physically,
right,
but I'm not there.
Right.
And the alcohol quit working, and I started getting like headaches every time, that I drank, and it would just make me feel like crap. And I'd try different, well, maybe I should drink some bourbon.
Sure.
Maybe
yeah.
and try to figure out the magic recipe.
You gotta up the ante.
Yep. And I come home, and Mom had this back surgery, and she'd been Mom's health was always bad all her life. Somehow she pulled off as many years as she did, but I saw this bottle sitting in her bedroom and picked it up and looked at it, and it was prescription bottles, and it said for pain. Well, I had some pain.
Sure. Yeah.
And I shook out two pills of each bottle, two of them. There was two big pills and two little pills. I didn't even read the labels any further than that, and put them in my pocket. As a matter of fact, what I did is I took the two small ones right now, and I put the two big ones in my pocket. And about 45 minutes later,
no pain.
The world was okay. I actually have photographs of that night. At this time, my wife is working night shift. She's a nurse working weekends only, night shifts, so she could make full-time pay working just nights.
Right.
And then she could be home with the kids all week, and I'd be home with them in the weekend. Well, there's a picture of the party that night with the kids in. I had bandanas tied around their heads and do-rags, and
sure.
And what I found out later is that was 2 OxyContin 40s. That I had taken.
40 milligrams. Is that?
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Is that little or a lot? I don't know.
It was a lot for me, and they would do one would do just about anybody.
Sure.
But I didn't know that then, and I, the world righted itself, and I grabbed a couple. The next night, Saturday night, I took the other 2, and although they weren't what last night was, they did just fine.
Sure.
And there was a time when my drinking wasn't every day, and I would just drink on the weekends. And what I say is that it collapsed on me. I started where I was, the disease progressed, and I was drinking every day before long, and the same thing with the pills.
No, I like how you kind of phrased it last time when you and I were talking, right? Dis-ease, right?
Yeah, right.
Really, I think it's really important to kind of state it like that, right? Because if we and if we look at disease in it of itself, that's something that kind of never goes away. And this is just me, right? Like, I'm not part of a program or anything like that. But if we take it and we break it apart like that, right? If we disaggregate that word and we say dis-ease, we know that we are in a place of discomfort, right? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
yeah, I am. But I also believe that this thing is
pervasive.
Yes, I do. I believe this is a lifelong thing for a guy like me. I don't think that's the case for everybody, but for me, and I'll throw something else out there, man. I'll sell you this solution in any manner you're willing to buy it in. You know what I mean? So sometimes that disease works for somebody, and sometimes it doesn't. And if you reject that premise, well, then I'm okay with that, right?
Sure.
I have a tools that will help you get better.
Yeah.
They just will. It doesn't really make any difference whether it's going to be better if you believe that this works for you, but it's not necessarily a requirement. But I do like that. It is. It's a dis-ease. I am not okay with myself. I am not at ease, and that does bring it down to fundamental stuff of that. I just like not comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
I don't feel like I fit in with you.
Right.
And so. I got 3 girls, my daughter and 2 girls stayed the night last night, and they distracted me over there to my right. And it threw me off a little bit.
Sure.
But my using and stuff started collapsing on me, and the same thing happened with the pills. So so next weekend I grabbed a couple more, and it was just a weekend thing for a while. But it collapsed on me to where I needed these things every day. So I started getting with my doctor. I started doing other kind of things in order to get them. And if I came to your house and you had some, you didn't have any when I left.
Right.
So you go through all the relatives and you go through all that. And when that ran out, I started going in people's houses I didn't know. That is called burglary.
Okay. So, I mean, this whole thing advances a while, and you're still working. You're still fully functional.
Again, the video did not match.
Yeah. No, I'm just
what I was doing. You're right. I
just want to track it, right? Just tracking it, right? Because I mean, you're going to work. You're a guy that's getting sent internationally to get things done.
Yep.
And you know, that's what everybo's seeing.
They're sending me to Singapore, to Korea. We had offices in Thailand. I have been all over the globe with that company, trusted to go do my job. Meanwhile, under the surface is this other dude. It's like almost, it's like two distinct personalities going on.
I'm just curious, kind of like, did you ever kind of decide what the underlying primary pain was that kept it going?
I do call it the disease of alcoholism. That's just what we say in our deals. It would be like, and it's just for simplifying terms. I'm not sure that it's really right.
Okay.
But I do know that there's some kind of mental instability in me that unless I am doing something to treat that actively, I'm just not okay.
Okay. Yeah. Look, so let's move on to that, right? Like, I mean, so look, I think the story is like, you got in deep, right?
Yep.
The story is you got in deep. You were in the grip. You're raising a family. You're doing all the, theoretical exterior right things. Your interior is getting like eaten up. But there comes a spot where and I think I talked about like hitting rock bottom, right? Like, I don't think you always have to get better, but you had a rock bottom moment.
Yeah, I did, and I actually had two of them that I'll speak of quickly. One of them was in 2011 when this thing finally ended up being enough and my marriage was getting rocky. And that was that catalyst kind of event that this dis-ease in my marriage was becoming an issue. And I went to, I called a doctor. I told him I couldn't claim with my wife and told her what was going on. And sought help for the first time in 2011, and I went to a detox center and got some help and dove into AA. And what I say now is that was basically that event was basically off of a bad weekend. That's all it was. It was just a bad weekend. No big deal.
Right.
I had a year of sobriety, and I sat down on my tools thinking I was okay, that I could move forward without this.
Yeah.
I didn't really think it, but I still.
Would you have like a beer or a drink? What did you get?
Well, I stayed sober during that time, and then slowly after I put down my tools, I remember my wife at that time was into herbal medicines and stuff, and she had like these cheap vodka and brandy and stuff that she would soak like herbs and stuff in to make tinctures.
That's right.
Yeah, and I looked over there one day when I was getting ready to go pay the bills, and I look over there because I know that cabinet right there was the one that they were sitting on, and there was a bottle of vodka and a bottle of brandy there, and I went and got a Dixie cup of all things and thought I will just have a drink. What lit up this thing that we call the phenomenon of craving, which is once I put some in me, I'm not really going to be able to stop. And a lot of people think that means tonight. Well, I only had a Dixie cup or two that night, and I stopped. But, a couple of nights later, it looked like a good, and then the ball started rolling again. I ended up having lost that marriage. Ended up in divorce, and my whole world just started crumbling, after that, to that point to where, and by now I'm breaking in houses stealing pills.
Wow.
And I got caught a couple of times by friends, associates, people that knew me a little bit, and of doing the deal where I would take them out of your house, and those people let me off the hook on my promise that I would go seek help. I never did.
Right.
But then finally, I ended up getting into a house, and I'll tell this story as fast as I can. I'm sitting here one night with a new girlfriend after coming back from Thailand. Another thing, my sobriety dates didn't really. I had an international sobriety date and a domestic sobriety date. When the cat's away, he's gonna play. So I
Sure,
was
man.
pretending to be sober during this time, even though I wasn't. I'm sitting here with a new girlfriend. My kids are here in the house. Her kid is in the house. They're all in bed. I tell this girl I'm going to. I'll be right back. I walk out the back door. I go around the corner. It's dark. I go across the house because the old man across the street always had medicine that I like to have. And over time, they were on to me. Matter of fact, I've been caught in that house before 6 months earlier. And I went over there and opened up the door, walk in their house while it's occupied, their home, go back in his bedroom where he is sleeping, reach in the dresser drawer, get to the medicine, shake out a handful. And when I turned around this time, there was a shadow standing there with a baseball bat and pepper spray. And he put the pepper spray 4 inches from my face and blasted it and lit into me with the ball bat.
Man.
I got away.
Wow.
I wrestled by him. And got out. I spent that night running the streets, not knowing what to do. I took off running in a different direction from my home. He knew who it was, obviously. I come back to my house at around 2:00 in the morning, and to see all the lights on in my house. I went around the side of the house and looked over there. My parents' car was in the driveway, and so was that girl's car. I didn't expect that girl's car to be there. Of course, I lost all consideration for what was going on there during that time. I was gone.
Right.
What I found out was that guy had come over to my house, and he had raked out the side lights of my windows and my door. He busted the window out in the door. He come in the house. He busted up everything that he could with the baseball bat.
Wow.
As he left, and my dad was over there cleaning up the house.
Wow.
I sat down behind a pine tree in my backyard and sitting there, and I remember echoing over and over again, what am I going to do? Right. What am I going to do?
Right.
And I heard the back door open and close, and I looked up, and there was my dad, and he had 2 5-gallon buckets, and I didn't know what he had at the moment. And he come walking down the pathway that leads to where we set out the garbage, and I was trying to make myself as small as I possibly could so that he wouldn't see me. And I heard his voice say, "Dan." And I looked up and I said, "Yeah." And he said, words that I will never forget. He said, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" And that is not what I was expecting to hear.
Yeah.
Now, for my dad, it actually is, but because of what I was thinking of what I had done, those were not the words I expected to hear. And next thing I know, I felt a hand on my knee, and he sat down beside me and said, "Come on in, let's go inside, take a shower, hit the sack, and we'll deal with this tomorrow."
That's powerful, man. That's powerful.
I tried to do that, and I came in and did that. And the next morning, so let me finish this last little piece on this part. I come in the house. I went to bed. I looked in the teary eyes of my mother and my girlfriend. My kids did not wake up. The cops had been searching my house that night looking for me. My kids were spared that memory they did not wake up as the cops were shining flashlights in their closets and under their beds. I woke up the next morning. I put that girlfriend, my kids, and her in my car and had them drive up the street so that if they got stopped, it wouldn't be me. And got in her car. But before I did that, I got up, took a shower, went back in the backyard, got under the rock where I'd left a handful of pills that I got the night before, and took a half dozen of them and put the rest of them in my pocket and moved on with my day. And that's comes to show this. There's a line in the book that says we couldn't remember the humiliation and the suffering of a week or a month ago when we decide to drink again or decide to use again.
Right.
And, I couldn't remember the humiliation or the suffering of last night.
Right.
The only thing I could think to do was put more pills in my body.
Right.
So a warrant come out for my arrest, and that was all went down in a whole nother angle. Just cut to the chase on that. I was looking at 6 to 20 years in prison. I was scared to death. I spent the next 6 months going to see the judge every month or every couple of weeks doing these pretrial things and seeing my lawyer and the prosecutor and the judge all had me convinced I was going to prison for at least 6 years. And I met up with some dudes on a Tuesday night, and something shifted for me that night. And that was when I met what my home group is, the Spiritual Underground. And that's what the name of the podcast is after.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I walked into there and started doing what one particular gentleman told me to do, who is still my sponsor today. and I ended up getting sentenced to a year of home incarceration, a year of probation, and another year set on the side, set on the shelf, as we say, pending successful completion of those two. So what went from a 6 to 20 year prison sentence, I ended up spending 9 months on home incarceration, and had time to do this work on myself, and my trajectory changed forever.
For sure. For sure. No, I mean, yeah, it's super powerful. I love how your dad just, kind of accepted you, right, in that situation.
He's always had my back, always.
Yeah, and I mean, that's super powerful. Have somebody like that there for you.
Yeah, and he still lives with me. He may walk by here in just a minute.
For sure. Look, you lost some relationships, and if I recall correctly, that job that you thought you were going to have forever, that ends up kind of getting dissolved as well.
Yep.
But you found yourself, right? You found yourself amongst like some friends or at least some associates in the spiritual underground.
Yeah, I would call them brothers.
Okay.
They really are. They really are. I'm a tap on my phone away from having help at my door if I need it, and I'm a tap away from providing help if somebody else needs it.
I got you. This so let's talk a little bit about like kind of living this transformative life, right? Like, I mean, because now you're stepping into a new space, right? Like I made the joke about the 12-step program, how I really only know about 2 steps of that program, and that's the first step is you kind of let go and accept that there's a higher power, right?
Well, first step is really that I have a problem.
Okay, first steps, you got a problem. I know that one of the steps you got to, you say, hey, there's a higher power. It's not just me. And then like one of the end steps is like spiritual awakening. And I'm like, well, I skipped a whole bunch of steps, but let's talk about like kind of what that journey's like. You talk about maybe even some of the work that you did to get to where you are today. Now, how long are you sober, if you don't mind me asking, Dan? Because I'm not sure.
5.5 years. So in January was my 5-year.
Congratulations, man. I mean,
thank you.
That's it's a lot, right? And it's a whole different life.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like kind of the journey though to me, it's not. I feel like it's liberation and freedom when you no longer have to observe like that, the hold that those things have, not necessarily observe, but like break those addictions, right? Well, once you have something else to do than to keep running back to those things that have a hold on you, a grip on you, you're free to go live a whole nother life.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I like to say, I do this, I say it enough, when I came into the rooms of recovery, the 12-step recovery, I try to they told me I was spiritually sick. I thought that meant that I thought they were dogging on me because I wasn't going to church. I had no religion. Through the process and an awesome sponsor and a great bunch of men, I came to understand that my actual spirit, my essence, my very being had been sickened. And how I got sickened was from living this thing called life, and in my case, in not a real healthy way. You don't pick up good tools on the path I was on.
And you definitely mentioned tools several times too. What are some of the tools, right?
Yeah, so that's what this 12-step program gave me, was some tools to work. And I'll also say that, we're now in the Louisville, Kentucky area and other places, we're offering this to people who are not necessarily addicts or alcoholics if they want some concrete tools to do. So, and there's a lot of people, not a lot, there's quite a few people. Russell Brand's one of them, is taking the 12 steps and kind of molded it into his way, but it's just really the same thing. It says, I got a problem to solve, right? Till I got a problem, there's nothing to work on, right? I mean, unless I have something to work on, if I don't have something, then what's there is to fix? You don't fix something that ain't broken. So I got to come to some understanding that this is actually a problem. Number 2, that step 2 says, basically, it says some, there's some pretty flowery 30 language, and that's one of the things that's kind of blocks people, but this coming to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. So there's some funny language in that says, this power greater than ourselves, everybody defaults on God, right?
Sure.
What I like to say is that, when I use the word God, I am saying it just like Kleenex. If you ask me for a tissue and I hand you a box and there's tissue sticking out of it, you're not looking on the bottom to see if they came from Myers, Kroger's, Target or whatever,
For
it's a
sure.
Kleenex. It's like saying Coca-Cola. It's like saying, any other name brand thing. It's just an easy word to use. Whatever that means to you, man, that could be
Sure.
your inner spirit. That's
Yeah.
power greater than yourself, can come from inside. It can be a more of a universal thing. It might be nature. It could be music. It could be who knows what. So, I always like, let's get over the block.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not doing this because you're talking about God to me.
Yeah, well, anytime somebody says God, like 90% of the people, especially in the Western Hemisphere,
And
think that
yeah,
you're saying
the Christian
the
God.
right, the Christian God, Jesus God,
Yep.
the God that molests all these people, right?
Yeah.
And that's a shame,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because now you're holding yourself back from possibility of accepting that higher power
Yeah.
simply over your own beliefs of what that is, right?
Right. So, it says, do you believe there's a power that can help you? Do you
Sure.
believe there is a power? Maybe that power for my new sponsee is me,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Hey, do you think I can help you?
Sure.
Here's where I was, here's where I am. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think that it can happen for you? So, I mean,
Sure.
it's just coming to believe that you can get some help. Is believing that you can get help necessary? Probably not required, but it does help if you're
So, yeah,
if you're a willing
yeah,
participant.
for sure.
Then step 3 is saying, okay, man, I'm willing to have some help. That's the help me step. Again, everybody gets hung up in this turn your will and life over to care of God. That's that 30s language that Bill Wilson, the author of that stuff, used. Let's just get over the language. It's just words and this stuff. We grunt these
Right.
noises and call them words, right?
Sure.
And we accept the meanings of them.
Right.
If you're blocked up by the words, I will
Change
use
them.
different
Right.
ones.
Change
Just
them.
like that
Change
word
them. Right.
disease earlier and disease.
Right.
I'm not going to let this human language be the block to how I can help you.
For sure.
So help me. That's 3. So then we get in some concrete work, man, and I do an inventory of my life, and I sit down and write down things of everything. We call them resentments, but I write down the stuff that's happened to me and what's made me who I am. Me and you talked about before about being programmed, right? That we get programmed by our life experiences. Well, then this inventory, we go look at that.
Yeah.
And in order to get deprogrammed, I got to look at the programming and the things that my life experiences that's happened to me and what made me who I am. So we got some concrete tools on how, and they're real simple too. This 4-step tool is pretty easy. I'm going through and looking at that stuff.
Right.
We look at 3 things. We look at resentments. We look at fears. We look at the things because most people are running on fear. We're scared of this, we're scared of that.
For sure.
And then what we've done in our sex lives, in our sex inventory, and how we think about that, just because it does such have a huge basis on what we are as a being, a human being. What I mean?
Yeah.
So we look at those 3 things, and then we do a 5th step, which is I tell somebody about everything. And when I sat down and talked to my sponsor and told him all my dirty secrets, a weight lifts off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's some vulnerability there too, right?
And that's a key concept of it. Absolutely.
Right, you're putting yourself in a state. You're putting yourself in a place where this person could easily come down on you for all the stuff that you've ever done. Hell, you've been condemning yourself for each and every one of those things, like 1,000 lashings for each and every one of those things for years now, probably. And when you come clean to somebody like your sponsor, and then they say, "What else?" You're like, "Didn't I give you enough?"
Yeah, there's some big. I mean, one of the big tools in that 5th step exercise is, I did that too. Yeah. Me too, man. Yeah. You're not alone. We think we're hiding down in the closet with all our own dirty secrets. Ultimately, to some extent, we've all done similar kind of things, and it wouldn't make any difference. I don't think you could take the addict and alcoholic aspects out of it. We still got stuff that we're, not particularly happy about that we did.
For sure.
So we do that, and then we have a couple more tools where we ask this power that's greater ourselves to help us get over it, help us to help take this stuff away. We call them character defects and stuff. Basically, and I don't like that term too much either because I am not defective. But let's take the stuff that the way I'm operating that I don't like, the things that I'm doing, and the way I'm operating that I'm not okay with, the things that no longer serve me.
There it is. Yep.
Universe, please help me get rid of this stuff.
Right.
Help me start operating on a new plane.
Sure.
And I'll just let me run through that real quick while my head's on it too, is that, and then we go out and the people that we have hurt, the people that we've done stuff to, the people I stole pills from, the people that I treated in a poor way, I go back out and I face those freaking people, man. And I tell them and I do amends with them. And we have a very powerful recipe for doing that. We have some prep work and some different things so that we can do that in a powerful manner. And we have a thing called the 9-step promises that are a very powerful bunch of statements of things like a fear of economic insecurity will leave you.
Scarcity. mindset, right?
So,
Yeah.
but that's just one of them. It's
Yeah.
fear of people will leave you.
Yeah.
You'll start being able to do things you never thought were possible,
Mm-hmm.
and it all comes up from going out there and clean up the past. Because now I'm not walking this earth worrying about seeing you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's
Because
powerful.
now if I'm
Yeah.
gonna walk around this earth in that fear
You're
mode,
facing your fears, right?
where
Yeah.
I'm afraid that if I'm gonna bump into you at Kroger's and I have that looking over my shoulder thing all the time, if I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
over my shoulder, I can't look at where I've been. I got to look
Mm-hmm.
at where I'm going.
Yeah. That's I
And
love
that ninth step allows me to clean up that past where I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore.
for sure.
And it
It's
repairs relationships too.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it at least kind of gets it off your mind, right?
Yep.
Even if I mean that relationship, um, you have the opportunity to go out there and you've got the opportunity. This is a kind of an exercise of courage,
Yep.
right? Exercise of facing your fears and
It's an
exercise,
action.
right? And you're not necessarily asking for forgiveness from them so much as kind of forgiving yourself for the actions you've taken.
There's a lot of that. There's a big piece of it is not really, it looks like it's between me and that person.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not. It's
Mm-hmm.
between me and my inner self.
Yeah.
I got to get cleaned up on my end. And to be honest, if that person rejects this amend and tells
Yeah,
me to go to hell and wish you drink yourself to death,
for
I
sure.
still have executed the action and
Right.
counted as a successful thing.
Yeah. And
It doesn't, their reaction to it doesn't matter.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, look,
That's usually not what happens though.
yeah, I mean, so, but there's that idea that, that can still happen. And understanding that their non-acceptance of that from you shouldn't reflect on your genuine intent for
And
that,
it is
right?
and it is so rare that ends up happening with this formula. When you go to somebody with your heart in your hand and you own the stuff you did, and that's really what people want, right?
Yeah.
You want that person to own that they did that. Really, I mean, that's what. And I don't even do apologies with people anymore. I do amends with people. I use that same formula no matter what. Even if it's I told a story not long ago. I was not quite the person I wanted to be with the clerk at the convenience store a couple of months ago. And I went and sat in my car and was getting ready to leave. And I was like, man, I don't like leaving that bad juju behind. And so I was like, so I get up and I walk in there and I tell this guy, hey, I'm not the guys you saw a minute ago. I don't want to operate like that guy anymore. And I harmed you by being a jackass here today.
Right.
And I wasn't real bad. It wasn't like
Sure.
and I owned it. I asked her if there's anything she needs to say to me.
Yeah.
Said a few words and got some things off of her chest. So she had a chance to verbalize her stuff.
Right.
And then I asked her if there's anything I can do to make it up, and she's standing there with her jaw open because she's never had anybody do that. And we fixed this little rift.
Sure.
First, real quick, and I don't walk around with that the rest of the day either, right?
Well, yeah, look, that's great, man. I mean, it's kind of like a vibratory cleansing, we'll call it, right? Like, I mean, why would you leave that behind, right? I love the rift. Same idea as a rift, right? Like a tear in like the universal fabric.
Right.
Sure.
And that's another one of the things that I can leave behind me, So part of this 10, 11, and 12 is starting to practice these principles in my life and doing these and using these tools that I just spoke of. And that 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of doing that work, doing those step work and going and cleaning out my past, then I am now to carry that and give these tools to other people. And I use these. And matter of fact, I did a fifth step with my sponsor. We actually did a back and forth 2-way fifth step yesterday. Over some issues that have been going on, some stuff about how we feel about this whole COVID thing and the pandemic, and some stuff about where we were at personally with the social equality issues going on in the world right now, and then we also had a little rift in the universe amongst our home group of guys, and so we had this little wad of undone business. So we applied these tools in the inventory and wrote it out and then spoke to each other about it. And we'll walk those tools out in order to get that piece of our thing. So that's that's the area that I see with this 12-step tools that I haven't found personally anyplace else, is that I have some concrete active tools that are not like I have to go to South America and take some ayahuasca, or I don't have to like go to these big huge links. I can do this work from my bedroom, and if I need to, I can do this fifth step over the telephone with somebody, so I can put these principles and these tools into effect, and they're, like I said, they're just concrete, And I've never seen anybody do this work that said, I wished I didn't do it.
Mm.
I will make a broad statement to say that that I can guarantee you that it will bring some improvement to your being. It'll improve. It will bring some more to your life. It's a guarantee.
Let's hit what was fifth step again?
Fifth step is that where you speak to somebody about this stuff. It said the step actually says admitted to myself, to God, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. That's what the step says.
Okay.
But basically, and it looks a little like a confessional, but it's really not, because you get feedback on it. And so that's sitting down and talking to somebody about it.
Sure.
And that's where you would do that in the lifestyle if you have a coach, right?
Right.
You got a problem, you got something going on, well, you would sit down with this coach and you would talk to him about it. So it's
yeah. I mean, it's the same idea as like, just kind of there's a blockage, right? You throw or even like, hey, I feel like there's some bad juju back there, right? Or up ahead or whatever. And you got to ask yourself, not only does it not serve me anymore, it's like, how else can I see this? How else can this be seen? Because your perception, Dan's perception, may not be the group's perception. You talk to your group, and so when you bring this out at a group, what's the use? Does the group see things exactly the way you do, or is it most oftentimes kind of different, right? And they're like, dude, you're crazy. That's not what we're feeling or thinking. That shit's in your head.
Right. And that is exactly part of that step 10 where it says that we talk to somebody about it. And so, one of the things I say, I can't see me very well. I really can't. I'd like to think I can see me, but I really can't. Right. So like when I got something going on like that, I bump it off either my sponsor or my support group members, my brothers in this brotherhood, and say, hey man, here's what's going on. What do you see in this? So I get another set of eyes to see me. And then the flip side of that is, they don't see themselves. I always say this, I don't see me very well. I actually don't run my life very well at all. But I got a guy who does.
Right.
I got a guy that does a pretty good damn job of running my life. Now, that's stretching it. He's not running my life, but he does a really good job of guiding me. Now, that guy, he don't do so good with his life either. But he's got a guy.
Sure. And then, that's great. I love that.
And then we build that, so, his guy is my guy also, right? So I got that guy, and I got this, there's a thing in the back into the 12 step and back into there's 164 pages is the sacred text of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps. And in the back of it, it says he will, and it's speaking of this higher power, but it's using that old masculine Christian God language. He will help you create the fellowship you crave. And I never knew, I didn't know, because at some base level, when you was talking about what it was that was missing, it was that connection with my people that was missing throughout that whole thing. And by partying and drinking, I could get that temporary measure, that temporary connection with these people. So it was filling that in. A point came where I got to where I couldn't do that with people anymore. Either my own being, nobody else was doing it. I'd gotten so bad that I was embarrassed to show my use at that level.
For sure.
So now here I have this fellowship of these guys around me that, like I said, I've got this connection to a community now, and it's broader than just, it's the ripple in the pond thing, right? I got my sponsor in real tight in that circle.
Sure.
By where the pebble landed in the water.
Right.
And then outside that next ring is my support group, my really close guys that I work with and talk to on a day-to-day, and then we meet up once a week and see each other, if not more times than that. The guys that come to the retreats, the guys that we go out to eat with.
And you're running these retreats, right there?
Yeah, it's another one of these miracles that happened. And I was 1 year sober, and I was not 1 year sober. I had an ankle bracelet on, and my group was going to a local forest to have a little day trip retreat they were going to do, and they went, and I couldn't go because it was outside the counties of the ankle bracelet that I could go.
Gonna go beep beep beep.
Yeah. Now they would let me go do my recovery stuff. They let me go to work. They let me do the things. Let me take my kids to scouts and my son to scouts, my daughters to dance, and they let me do that. But this was outside where I could go, and they wouldn't let me. And so one of the things was they had people running into them, and they kind of complained about that they weren't in a private location. Well, 20 years ago, my dad and my brother and I built a log cabin on 54 acres outside of town here, about an hour drive away, and they were talking about having that retreat and how lack of privacy, and you get that nudge from above, and I was like, hey, I got a place. And I had, in 2016, I held my first men's retreat. In May of this year was my 7th. So yeah. Wow. And I say over and over, I don't know how this happens. You know, it never was orchestrated. It wasn't like I said, hey, I'm going to do this someday. No different than the Spiritual Underground podcast. I never did set sights on saying someday I'm going to be doing this podcast, or, you know, I've got a wood shop in the backyard that was manifested out of this recovery movement.
Sure.
You know, and I thought it was manifested at like almost no dollars to me.
Right.
And how that happens, you know, but now I have this, after losing that 28-year career, a year before I lost that job, we built this wood shop. I got all these tools out there. I'm starting to make stuff for people out and doing little projects on the side for money and that. And lo and behold, you know, I say when God built that cabin in 1999, I had no idea what he was doing. Now it is where I take people to do fifth steps. I bring my guys down there. We have these retreats.
Church of Dan.
And then, I'll reject that pretty quick. We call it the Fargo Hunt Club. There's a little town in Indiana called Fargo, and I mean, nothing more than 2 gravel roads crossing with a green sign there and a trailer on every corner. But we call it the Fargo Hunt Club. All my buddies have become to think of it as a sacred place. It really is. You know, it was built on dope and booze. I stood up on that log wall driving spikes down through the walls with the beer can sitting on the log behind me, more concerned with knocking the beer over than I was driving the spike.
There probably wasn't much left.
Yeah, and now it's a completely different energy down there. Right. You know, it's a completely different energy. You know, and I got this wood shop back here where now I have this gig that allows me to put my, you know, I went to a Mankind Project, and they have you talk about a mission, you know, and my mission is to create a world of healing recovery through guiding people to find their true purpose with the 12 steps.
Yeah. Look, and you're doing it right now, right? So, and one other thing that I'm gonna hit on before, I know you're working, or your guys created a 12-step book. Sounds like you're, you know, heavily promoting it. It might be something you guys are doing in kind of cahoots. But you know, you became a yoga instructor. Did I get that correct? I mean, so
yeah, that's another one of the things. You know, my miracle list is deep enough that if I don't, when I was brand new, my sponsor said these things were happening to me that were of great nature, and he said you should start writing that stuff down,
right?
Because you're going to forget it.
Yep.
And I started doing it. Nowadays, we'll do a little thing. He'll go, add that to the list. And so I became a yoga instructor.
Now, what's that list? What do you, is that your
I call it my miracle list. I just always have, you know, it could be also, you know, there's a tool out there called a gratitude list where when you're feeling down, you write down all the stuff that's good, all your gratitude. You know, it's kind of a long-term gratitude list where I can go back and look at these things that have, frankly, the universe has brought me to where I'm at right now. Why in the world?
You must have something valuable left off.
Why in the world would I believe that it's going to drop me off here? Right. Yeah. So I begin to doubt that the next thing I'm not going to be supported with. Right. I go, you know, that can't be, I can't do that. That's beyond my abilities. Well, I'll quick look at this gratitude list, this miracle list will tell me, hey, look at what's happened to date. What do you think it's going to stop? Yeah. So that, and that yoga teacher training thing was another thing. Some girl, you know, that's been one of my character defects is, since my marriage ended, I certainly got no room for giving relationship advice, but a gal come into my life and she snuck me into a yoga class and she tricked me into going because she knew me. I would make any reason not to do that because that's not masculine. I can't do it. You know, I'm not flexible enough. I'm not, you know, all the different reasons about why I couldn't do that. And I fell in love with yoga and it became a part of my recovery. And that's another thing that's going on in the world is a combined 12-step recovery yoga thing. That combines the benefits of yoga with the benefits of 12-step philosophy and gives you a little power punch through using those two tools. And now I coach people I'm working with to get into it because that exercise does something to me that I don't get from riding a bike or swimming or going to the gym.
You can't.
Yoga does something to my spirit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, and that's all part of it, right? And I love it, right? I love how you're transitioning into this other being, this authentic you, right? Without hiding underneath the pills, without, if you do have some self-doubt, you're facing it with, the stories that you're telling yourself and reviewing the stories and looking at them in a different way instead of saying, well, shit ain't gonna happen today. I'm gonna have to have a beer, right? Like it ain't happening today. This, and then you start to develop like these quote unquote like healthier mechanisms of dealing, right?
Yep. Yep. And it gives you that positive outlook too, man. I mean, it just means all the world to have these people around me. We encourage one another. My sponsor, they've been the biggest coach for me and encourager from the beginning about, go for it, Dan.
Yeah.
Go for
Yeah.
it. Go
Listen,
for it.
when you get
You can do
that,
it. What can I do to help you do it?
that's important too, right? So when you get that encouragement to go be yourself, right? And when you get that encouragement that says, how can I help you? Right? You're like, not only are you saying that I can and should go pursue this, but you're willing to offer like assistance for that.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Now,
It really is.
tell me a little bit about the 12 step book you guys are using to apply to daily. Like, you don't have to be an alcoholic to use
Yeah.
these tools.
Yeah. It kind of goes into, do you have to, do you have to be from India to benefit from yoga?
Right.
We one of the other premises in 12-step philosophy is I got to be willing to let go of my old ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We hang on to these can'ts and shoulds, and it's only this way, and only those kind of people can do this, and we got to let go of that stuff. So my sponsor was sober he just celebrated in May 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
At the 18-year mark, he had that feeling of there's got to be more.
Mm.
And the universe provided and bumped him into some teachers, and his life changed with that many years sober, from being this just not drinking dude to this plane that I today get to benefit from. Right. And so he had these teachers, and he got this happening to him, and he got to feeling like, and you go around, and this can cause a little bit of a rift, but I'm comfortable speaking my truth today in this. A lot of recovery rooms is so stuff going on in there. It's not the level that we can get to. There's a lot of less than it could be recovery going on. And if you fall into those rooms, they're just not very attractive. When people are just struggling just to stay sober today, that becomes something, I think you and I, if I'm like having to fight that hard at something, then something's not going right. So he had all these tools, and it wasn't documented, and he wasn't seeing it, and it's not in that book that Bill Wilson wrote and released in 1935. Plus, a lot of people rejected that 1935 language. Right, with that God word and other kind of thous and these and things like this that would cause a guy to inherently reject this stuff. So he put these tools down on paper and started writing this book about 6 years ago, modernizing the language and bringing forward, I would say, expanding the concepts of how to, what we call, squeeze more juice out of this work.
For sure. Yeah.
And so he did that, and he wrote the book, and it's called 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. You can find it on Amazon. The author is James Christopher Cohn. It is the 12 steps for anybody. He goes into showing how this, with Alcoholics and Addicts, we're pretty clear about this booze and dope bringing us to our knees.
Right.
If you're rejecting that premise, you're not ready for help yet. But the normal person, what is it? They need to define what is that problem sometimes, and that spiritual sickness thing is that, frankly, our spirits get stepped on by doing this thing called life, and it happens through our peer groups, through our education, through our parenting, our family systems.
Do you find like
all kinds of ways?
Do you find like the spirit really hasn't been addressed, right? Like, I mean,
it's there when you're a kid.
Well, here's the deal though. Like, do you remember any spiritual school, like any spiritual class on spirituality from like K1 through 12, right? Like,
I don't recall any. No, I had some spiritual teachers walk through my life that I couldn't,
but even then, right? Like, but then,
right, yeah, no, it's a lack of exposure,
right? And I think that even with the current Western style church, is that it's very, here's what you do, here's how they did it. But the application to the spirit doesn't seem to be readily visible.
And it's based on a lot of hope. You got to just turn your, just hope this is going to work for you, or this 12-step stuff actually gives you some tools and the action behind it. And I'm not so sure that it's the total effectiveness of the tools, although I know the tools are effective. The effectiveness may just be in that you're doing something.
Sure. I mean, look,
that you got off your ass and you're doing something.
It doesn't matter though, right? Like, as long as you do get up and you get going, right? As long as you, just like you said, take some action and start leaning into it. And I think that that's not too different than general coaching. It sounds like a lot of the tools are, here's what I'm finding more and more. There's overlap of the tools, right? It's just how you apply them, where you apply them, when you apply them,
Yep.
and all those things. So
that's what I say about the higher power thing and the tools and all that. It seems like everybody wants to be able to receive that gift, but you need yours tied with the blue ribbon, and Bill needs his with a green one, and I need a red one on mine. And it's really all the same gift inside that box, but it's just got a little bit different color ribbon on it. And because it's blue, Brandon can accept it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason,
That's it. Yeah.
Who cares why?
That's the only color I see is blue.
Yep. Yeah, because the further down the path I get, the more you do, you start getting into alignment where you see, the Buddhist principles and the stuff out of the Bhagavad Gita, and and then even being able, for me, it's big time growth when I start being able to actually peek into that Bible and seeing that those principles are there too. I don't have to reject that anymore. Also, I actually what I get to do, and that's one of the things, is that I always got this message, and I'm not sure if I took the message or if it was actually given to me, but I got this message that it was their way or the highway kind of thing when any religion I would get into. I don't know that, I won't say that's true, but that's the way I looked at it. Way I can find today, man, I get to pick and choose. I like to say, through this 12-step program, I get to go to Walmart, buy a brand new ball of Play-Doh, and I get to come home and I get to form that thing up into what works for me. And I get to build my own spirituality from scratch. And I think it works.
Look, man, listen, if it's working for you, right? I think that it's okay. One of the things that I kind of guess that I took away from a lot of these, spiritual books and everything like that, is that if you just, it's just like anything else in life. If you just follow one, you'll be cool.
You will be.
If you just follow one, you'll be cool. If you just focus on kind of like one thing, no matter how small it is in life, you'll be cool, right?
Yep. I didn't start wrapping all these other ones and swinging them in until a little further down my path, because another thing the 12 steps tells me is to continue to seek. Continue to improve my conscious contact with whatever power it is that I'm getting hooked up with here. So and in order to do that, I do that through yoga, and I do that through mankind, and I do that through reading other books. And I do that because when you mentioned a couple of books to me on the podcast the other day, I write the names of the books down because I didn't think I got that message by accident. So I'll be open to looking and exploring this other stuff.
So, you've got the podcast going. You've got, somewhat of a movement going, right? You're hosting events and
the 12-step spiritual recovery, we call it TSSR. There's a 12-step spiritual recovery.com, and there's a Facebook page called 12-step spiritual recovery. We're hosting meetings here in Louisville that look a lot like 12-step meetings, where anyone is welcome to come try the 12-step tools.
Right. So is it TSSR.com?
No, it's got that big old long thing.
Okay, just making sure. Recovery. Okay, I want to make sure somebody finds it, right?
Yep, 12stepspiritualrecovery.com.
Podcast is SpiritualUnderground.org.
Yep. And for you, the Spiritual Underground podcast. If you're the website, SpiritualUnderground.org. I haven't done as good a job keeping that up lately because I've got the little hit counter on it, and I just, that and YouTube is the two places where I've kind of invested some energy. And decided that my energy hasn't been really. I'm actually thinking about redoing the website and just put a link to the podcast. Put the Google Play and the Apple and the links on it, and just let it be like that rather than put content. But yeah, Spiritual Underground podcast is at all the major platforms that are out there: Google Play, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, Anchor's the host.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you're putting out great content, man. You're helping people. You've got people reaching out to you from all over the world to, thank you for kind of putting yourself out there and what you're doing. I thank you for, reaching out, accepting the conversations. You did mention some books. I mean, what is like one or two books outside of the 12-step program, obviously, that have really impacted your journey?
One book is Journey into Power. Is the Baron Baptiste. He is the guru of the yoga style that I do. Is a power vinyasa, Baptiste style power vinyasa. It's called Journey into Power is what it's called. And it goes through a lot of lifestyle stuff. It's not just a yoga book. It's about what your diet is. You are what you eat to some extent. You can't go put crappy fuel in your body and expect it to run good. I can't put crappy gas in my car and expect it to run good. He talks about meditation and different things. So that was definitely a big one. And something that really turned my corner on the way I look at spirituality was there's an old preacher called Emmett Fox, and his Sermon on the Mount, which instantly I want to reject that book because of its Western, for me, for Dan. Want to reject that because it was based on Jesus' words in the New Testament and the Sermon on the Mount, and most people have heard about that. But he shed a new light on what those things could mean for somebody rather than the meaning I had absorbed. So out of two books that probably shook my foundation, those two things. That girl that snuck me into yoga bought me that Journey into Power book 2 years before I ever thought about taking yoga teacher training. And I sat down and read that book, and I still am amazed that I sat down and read that book. There was no reason. I wasn't really interested in yoga. But I wonder, well, I guess I better read this. My girlfriend gave it to me.
Sure.
I don't know, but it did. It changed me.
I love it. I love it. Is there anything else that, again, we get through the tail end here, that if you feel like anybody should hear out there, right? So if somebody made it to the end of this podcast, what else should they hear for today?
Well, let me tack that on with this sort of a little bit about the podcast too. What I do at the podcast, I explore how people come to find themselves. We call it recovery. To me, recovery is to reclaim that which was lost or stolen.
I love it. Yeah,
that's a definition I had found, and that's in the 12-step spiritual recovery stuff. So and I heard your guests today listen to your podcast. I think this common theme is that we're trying to get closer to what our true selves are, right? And there's a bunch of avenues to do that. My roots come from 12-step recovery. I do believe that it will work for you regardless if you're addict or alcoholic or just want some new tools in your life. What I do with the podcast is have people come on and talk about their journey to how they found themselves or are moving. I hesitate to say that I've actually found myself, but I'm closer than I used to be, and I'm on a journey of finding myself. Majority of it is that. I think the big thing is that when you hear that other people have done it, especially in this podcast type of environment where you actually just hear these people's voices and you hear the passion in them about what has happened for them, that translates into hope for you that it can happen for you too.
Beautiful. I love it.
Those voices. So that's what I try to bring out with the podcast is that, you said something, it's not really for me. It's if we can only touch one person with this podcast and that person decides, hey, I'm going to be a better version of me, then our mission is completed today.
Dan, thank you so much for popping on today. Really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, man.